Welcome to Black Tot Rum Club. My name's Mitch Wilson. I'm the global ambassador for Black Tot Rum. And today we have a very, very special guest. We're going to be introducing the creator of Black Tot Rum himself. But before we get there, just a quick thank you to everyone who's been tuning into the session so far. We had a lot of people write in about our last guest, Mr. John Hume, our wonderful stores accountant, or Jack Dusty from the ships. A lot of you very much enjoyed his session. You'll be pleased to hear he'll be joining us again very, very soon for our 50th anniversary celebrations. And we'll be doing a little special announcement at the end of today. So stay tuned to the end of the session, and we'll be announcing what we have planned for the 50th anniversary of Black Tot Day this year. So our special guest today has quite the resume. Very well known in the whiskey world as the creator of the Whisky Exchange. In our rum world, we're delighted to have him as the creator of Black Tot Rum and the person who originally found the Navy Rum Flagons that we have in our Black Tot last consignment. So without further ado, we'd like to welcome our guest for tonight, Sukhinder Singh.
Hi,
hello.
Guys. Hi, Mitch. How are you?
How are you? Yes,
really
very good, thank you. How are you?
All good.
Wonderful. So we like to start things off with a little rum. Oh, we've got Paulino. How are you, Paulino? Welcome to the session. Cheers, everyone. If you're at home, pour yourself a little tot of rum and sip along with us. We've got some amazing stories for you tonight. And I know Sukhinder's got some very, very special bottles, which he's going to be showing to you all. So today will be a wonderful day. If you've got any questions, anything you want to ask the man himself, today's your chance to put that in the comments. We're also going to be giving away a bottle of Black Tot Finest Caribbean. So if you share the video, we will be putting that up today as well. So, Sukhinder, I'd like to start off with, because you're infamous in the spirits industry. Everyone knows you in the whiskey world, and there might be some people in the rum world who aren't as familiar with you from your background. So I'd love to, for anyone sort of catching up for the first time, I'd like to sort of delve a little bit into your origin story and what first got you into the booze industry.
Okay, Mitch. So yeah, look, I grew up in my parents' shops. My parents were the first Indians in the UK to get a liquor license back in 1971, 72. So, it was just really growing up in the shops, helping out. And I guess I was really fascinated by all the different spirits in the shop, all the colors and all the different categories and the bottles on the top shelf, which were, the more expensive ones. So that's really where it started. I think initially it was just really curiosity. It wasn't like I fell in love with whiskey straight away. It was just across the board. It was, I was learning about whiskey. I was learning about rum. I was learning about cognac, gin, vodka, liqueurs, wine, beer. We sold a bit of everything. And I think it was probably an amazing arena to grow up in. Trying to learning from the ground up about everything from as a basic product as possible. So that's really where it started. And then I guess I started collecting miniatures as a hobby. And from miniatures, at first it was just general miniatures, collecting a little bit of everything. And then I got to a point in my collection where after buying a very, very large collection, I had to make a decision that I needed to specialize in something. And I guess the spirit category that interested me most was single malt whiskey. We didn't have very many single malt whiskeys in the shop, but those were the bottles which were some of the bottles which were on the top shelf. I remember when customers used to come, my father used to say, "Could you grab the ladder and bring that bottle down?" So, you knew it was something special because it was high up. And so I fell in love with single malt whiskey. I started specializing in collecting single malt whiskey miniatures. Really started learning about single malts, reading about them, started going to Scotland, and that's really where it took off. But I guess in the shop, one of the other spirits, I guess, which really fascinated me was rum. We were our first shop and our main shop was in Hanwell in West London. We had a huge Afro-Caribbean community, and my father decided that he was going to basically specialize in rum, amongst other things. And we had a huge following from the Afro-Caribbean community. Some people coming from far and wide, as from outside London, some from South London, some from East London, because we had such an amazing selection of rum. And when I'm saying an amazing selection of rum, I'm talking about only 10 to 15 different products, yeah? Because in those days, there were not that many products available. But I think for the Afro-Caribbean community, they wanted Bajan rum, they wanted Jamaican rum, they wanted Guyanese rum, they wanted, Trinidad rum. And that's what we sold, and that's what we had a selection of. So I think you've got a picture, an image showing me standing in the shop, and it just shows you a selection of, the type of products that were available. And looking back at that picture, Man Gay, that picture is from 1991.
Indeed. So let me throw that up for you now, Sukhinder, so we can have a look at this. So here we are, Sukhinder Singh, 1991.
So as you can see, I'm literally standing in front of the rum section. The rums are in the middle. You've got Cockspur, you've got Bundaberg, of course, you've got Bacardi, you've got Ray and Nephew, you've got ESA Fields, which is basically Dawley's White. I think you've got Dawley's, you've got Lang's, Banana Rum, you've got Lemon Heart, you've got Appleton, and then you've got the standard Woods, Captain Morgan, Pussers, etc. So pretty much that was the extent of the rum available in the UK. And I think what really got
I think people are very happy to see the young Sukhinder Singh in action. This is gold dust right now, an exclusive for Black Tot Rum Club.
So I think one of the rums which really intrigued me at the time and really captivated me was XM. So there was this lovely gentleman, I'm pretty sure his name was Dwayne. It was Dwayne or Wayne, I can't remember. And he came up, he came in the shop and said, "I'd like to sell you some rum." So, okay. So what is it? He goes, "It's XM from Guyana. It's the best rum in the world." You just say, yeah, great. But it was special. There was something about it that I really, really liked. And so, we stocked it. He passed the word around that, we stock it. And we started getting a little bit of a following. And the thing was, we continued to sell it from 1991 till the point that we sold the business, which was in 99. And the interesting thing is, a few years after that, after I started the Whisky Exchange, we started basically importing and distributing a few small niche products which we felt had a call in the UK. And we started bringing in XM because I just liked it. And I still remember it was such a beautiful, beautiful balanced rum, lovely fruit forward, but it's got that little bit of funk. And it's just beautifully blended, beautifully elegant. And interestingly, I remember that in the early days of Rumfest, when Richard Seal was behind his stand, I always used to go and talk to Richard Seal, to see what's up. And the funny thing was, in the early days, because Richard was very quiet, still is, maybe not so much anymore, but he was a very quiet, shy guy who just used to stand behind the stand of all the Dawley's rums and the Foursquare rums. And it was interesting because no one actually knew who he was. They thought he just worked on the stand. But I always used to go up, have a lovely long conversation with him. And then I remember at early Rumfest, we had a stand for XM. And he came up to me and said, "Can I try these?" Because I'm quite fascinated by XM. And so he tried them. And I go, "What do you think?" And he goes, "I have to say their master blender is a genius." He goes, "These are so well put together rums. that I'm very, very impressed. And what you have to remember is that XM is just a brand. It's not a distillery. So in the early days, I believe they used to buy all their stock from DDL, Demerara Distillers, until I believe their relationship broke down, and now they buy rums from elsewhere. Or there was a period when they bought rums from elsewhere. So that's really how I started getting into rum. And after that, in the early days of our current setup, we then started importing Trois Rivières. We then started importing Diplomatico, etc. So yeah, that's how it started, Mitch.
Fantastic. And it's fascinating that kind of by circumstance, by you having that Caribbean community around your bottle shop, I guess it sort of led you guys down that rum path that many others wouldn't get to for many years. So
yeah. I've just remembered I've got a bottle of the old XM here, if you can see it. There we are.
How beautiful is that?
Beautiful, beautiful label.
That's stunning. We should how does it taste?
I'm trying to describe how it tastes. It's been a long time.
Maybe we should check
the interesting thing was when the flavor profile changed, and I think their supply changed. For me, I didn't enjoy it anymore, and we dropped the agency. And that was going back probably about 7-8 years. And it's interesting that one of our early employees in our distribution company, a guy called Robert Jupp, known as nickname Skippy, a legend in the drinks industry as well. And I remember we asked him, so what interests you about the company? He goes, 2 reasons. You stocked 2 of my favorite products. One was Tapatio tequila, and the other was XM rum. So, it had a lovely cult following from a handful of people that really knew what it was.
Yeah, fantastic. So, okay, so cut forward then. So after your years in the bottle shop, you amassed this miniature collection, and then you started Whisky Exchange. What was the bridge there? What was the initiative there to create
So I said we got to a point in the family business that we couldn't really take it any further. Parents wanted to retire, so we sold the family business. I was in love with whiskey. My brother agreed and said, let's specialize in whiskey. We set up the Whisky Exchange, and in the beginning it was purely whiskey, nothing else but whiskey. But then I think we both missed spirits, and we felt that no one was doing an amazing job on niche and quirky and quality-led brands. So we decided to get back into mixed spirits alongside whiskey. So probably about 4 or 5 years after starting the Whisky Exchange, we then started bringing spirits back in and started importing bits and pieces after that, another 4 or 5 years later.
Yeah. And today, and obviously the selection today is incredible now. And I know,
of course,
Dawn Davies, of course, your buyer, is incredibly passionate about rum, and Whisky Exchange was, one of the few, I guess, online retailers to really nail a rum category system as well, which has been well publicized and lauded as well. So it's exciting.
It's been good fun. It's been great fun.
Any chance we might have a rebranding to the Rum Exchange anytime soon?
I think no. I think we're happy the way we are in the current setup. Remember, parent company is specialty drinks, so and that's what we do.
Just a thought for you, So okay, so the part and the story that I was very excited to first ever ask you about when I joined you at Black Tot was the origin of these Navy Rum Flagons. So obviously we know we sort of have these stories, these tales of after Black Tot Day and the Navy rum blend coming to an end, the rum was stored in these flagons and sealed away, and then somehow 40 years later you're bottling it into Black Tot Last Consignment.
Correct.
So what I would love to share, and I'm sure most of the people watching would love to know as well, is what was that story? How did you first discover those Navy Rum Flagons?
I think, look, as a person who was interested or still is interested in spirits, I think, whiskey's in my blood. I love whiskey, but I'm so interested in other aged spirits like rum and cognac and armagnac and Calvados and things like that. So I'm always looking for nice products, special products, interesting products. Even as a collector, I mean, you can see some of my collection in the background. I have approximately 10, 11,000 bottles in my collection. Out of the 11,000 bottles, probably 200 or 300, 400 are mixed spirits. I've got about 50 different rums. I've got, 50, 60 different cognacs. But what I collect is predominantly historic bottlings where either the brand itself has a lovely history or the distillery has a history. So I've always been interested. So when I was approached by an ex-sailor, a Navy officer, saying, I've got these rum flagons, would you be interested? And I was like, I had heard about rum in the Royal Navy. I didn't know too much about it. Of course, I knew the Pusser's brand. So looking at these flagons, it was like, wow, this is amazing. There's something really interesting. I did a little bit more research and realized that, that the final stock of rum was put into demi-johns, and even prior to that was put into demi-johns for transportation, etc. So it was very interesting, and I bought them based specifically for myself. And I've got an example here of, approximately somehow what they look like. They were in these 4.5 liter demi-johns, as you can see, which is one imperial gallon, 4.5 European liters or UK liters. So I bought them and put them away and didn't really think anything of them. Then this gentleman put me on to a friend of his who had another 5 flagons. So when he approached me, I was like, wow, okay, another 5. Yep, I'll happily take those. So I bought those as well. And I think that scenario continued where basically they just referred me to their friends. And I got to a point that I was like, I've got couple of dozen of these flagons. Do I really want more? I've got enough, for the interest and for the history. But the question which kept boggling my mind was, how good is this rum? So I popped open, I took the wax off, took the cork out, and tried the rum. And to my amazement, it was absolutely sensational. I was actually completely in shock because you think back and you think that this rum was produced on mass scale. It wasn't a very old rum, and it was really for the sailors for mass consumption. So I was just shocked how it could be so good. I put that demi-john on my desk and left it there for a week, and every day for that week I would retry it to see if it would A, change, or B, just to make sure it was as good as I thought it was. Once I was determined that this was pretty special, I then took it to a couple of friends in London who for me were, rum fanatics and rum aficionados. One was Paul McFadden with his colleague Ben. Richard Woods is another guy, and said, guys, what do you think of this? And they were just like, this is amazing. Can we buy some? And I was like, okay, hold on. We'll come back. So I then I was determined to buy absolutely everything I could find. And I approached Her Majesty's Navy to find out more. And what they told me was that in 1994, they disposed of the full stock of the rum flagons which they possessed to a private individual. Yeah, I think you have a letter, one of the original documents which I managed to get, which shows the release of the rum, the collection note of the rum from 1994. So the interesting thing, Mitch, which I learned many years later, I didn't know at the time, it was actually a friend of mine who bought these flagons from the Ministry of Defense, a gentleman called Ken Copleston, who was
Right.
also a miniature collector. That's how I knew him.
Right.
As I said, I didn't know anything about it. And he, I believe, bought it purely as an investment. He found it very interesting and he bought it purely as an investment. And then I think about 10, 15 years later, he then sold the stock to two different parties. He sold the stock to a company in America, and he sold the majority of the stock to a wine trading company in the UK, who were basically selling wine, casks of whiskey, and these rum flagons as an investment to private individuals. Sadly, there was something untowards going on, and the whole thing was actually quite a bit of a scam. And the government actually closed them down and confiscated all the stock. The stock was then given to liquidators to initially just to keep until the court case was cleared and all charges that were owed to various people were paid. And I think that took a good several years to do that. So when I came on the scene, this is back probably in 2007, 2008, 2009, the Ministry of Defense then put me on to a company who basically knew a lot about what was going on. They in turn put me in touch with this liquidators. So I got in contact with the liquidators asking, do you have these flagons of rum? And they go, we've just sold them. I go, really? He goes, yeah, we've just sold them. He goes, literally, we sold them yesterday. And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. This cannot be happening. How could I miss this by one day?
And how long had you been looking for these flagons by that point?
I think it was probably a good 6 months, but going through the channels, it took time. And I was doing it quite casually, taking my own sweet time, because it was complicated. There was no direct link, from A to B or A to Z. I had to go from A to B, B to C, etc. So I started talking to the guy. I go, look, how many flagons are there or were there? And he goes, look, there's close to 3,000 flagons. And I'm like going, oh my God, how could I have missed this? So I go, is there any chance, And he goes, look, what would you offer? And I go, what is in the stock? Because as well as the flagons, there was actually a little bit of wine, some champagne, some casks of cognac. So he sent me a list. I valued it. I got back to him within an hour and made him an offer. Unfortunately, the offer was actually a lot more than they had received. So he changed his mind and said, actually, I will sell it to you because it is our job to achieve the maximum for our clients. So therefore, your offer is substantially more. We haven't committed to the other individual, even though that, the deadline is passed. So we'll agree to sell it to you. So fortunately, I managed to purchase, as I said, this is probably back in 2008, 2009, approximately 3,000 flagons. Wow. I then decided that, I was going to go after the company in America because I really wanted to amass the entire stock. Because, I didn't want to go ahead and do a project and then somebody else does a similar project, in a different way. And for me, just would undermine the product itself if there were two different products on the market with different stories, etc. So they agreed to sell me their stock as well. So I was quite convinced. I amassed literally, 98, 99% of the stock. I knew there was probably some stock in private hands because of this wine brokerage selling, 5 flagons to a private individual here, 10 flagons to another individual there. So it was a complete mix. So that's how we ended up acquiring the stock. Once we acquired the stock, it was a case of, what do we do with it? Do I start selling it by the flagon, or do we come up with a project, to bottle the stock, which for me made a lot more sense, because, to sell 4.5 liter flagons, A, the cost, and B, pouring it in a bar or in an establishment was going to be very difficult. So it made sense to put it into, a proper bottle. And, over my time doing research, you came across, of course, the most important Black Tot Day, the day the rum ration was abolished. And for me, this was the final stocks of the original rum. So for me, there was no better name than Black Tot. Fortunately, it was not registered. We managed to do so. We then set upon the task of marrying these flagons and creating a product which we then bottled and could sell. So through our journey, sorry, Mitch.
So I just wanted to jump in there. So when you had these original flagons, one of the things I'm curious about was, when you were first going through them, the different flavor profiles, or
Correct.
were they all the same? Did you have different types of rum going on there? What was your experience first tasting all the different flagons you had?
I think initially I didn't know there was going to be a difference, but there were some different markings on different flagons. So I decided to open a number of them with different markings to see if there was a difference. And actually, there was quite a remarkable difference. Some of them were much heavier and richer. Some of them were a little bit more thin. So we found that there was like 3 or 4 different styles. Yeah. Initially, I had thought that the main reason for these styles was because of the 2 different victualers' yards. Yeah. And that, they might have been bottled at different times, etc. And that because it was 2 victualers' yard, they would have been bottled into flagon from each victualler yard. So that was my initial interpretation of it. But over time, what we've realized is, because the blends, or the components of the Solera kept changing, the formulas kept changing, and that the fact that these flagons had been bottled at different times, some of them had been bottled 5 years earlier, some 10 years earlier. And what's really interesting to see is some of these flagons on the wax actually are dated, which is beautiful. So I've seen at least 15 to 20 different dates on, some going back as far as 1930. From memory, that's the oldest I've seen. And of course, up to 1970. So I think the main thing is, it depends when they were bottled is what really constituted to the different flavors. So we, of course, had all this rum. We had to come up with a formula or a recipe. So through trial and error, looking at how many of each style we had, we came up with a composition which we felt was quite right. It took us ages. It took us literally a year and a half to get there.
And with those different ages, because I was lucky enough, just before all the lockdown happened, I went up with Oliver Chilton and Andrew Thompson. We went up to the warehouse and started going through some of the remaining flagons and the boxes, and dating them and coding them, and working out the way of how to put them all together for exciting things coming up. But in those early years, when you were first looking at the flagons and tasting them, did you notice, were the earlier bottlings heavier or lighter than the later ones, or did you feel they were just very different profiles? What was your experience there?
I would say the profiles are quite different, markedly different. You've got the house style, that heavy Demerara, but it was the intensity of it. So I don't honestly remember, Mitch, to hand which styles dated to which era. I genuinely don't. It was something I need to go back and check my records on.
We may have to go and do another tasting.
Yeah, sure. I agree.
I think that would be, I think for a lot of the rum geeks out there, one of the most fascinating things would be to try the vintages side by side of
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Absolutely. Could
maybe
be a
that's
project.
work on. That'd be fun. All right, just try and get as many cool Black Tot things across the line whilst we can in this session. Right? So you came to bottling Black Tot, and obviously the name Black Tot, coming from Black Tot Day, obviously is makes perfect sense. It's the perfect emblem for that. And in those initial days, as well as blending the flagons together, you were putting together a lot of content. And I know you had Dave Broom join you for writing some of
Correct.
the book content with it as well. So how did that come about?
I think, look, Dave is a close friend, someone I respect admirably. His knowledge on anything alcohol, his interest and his passion on anything alcohol is superb. And I think for me, it was just, instant to go and talk to him about this. And he knew enough to say, you know what, this is so interesting. I'd love to do more research on it and write this book for you. So for me, it was just like, absolutely yes. And for me, the style and the quality of his writing is the best. No one can match it. So for me, it just had to be done.
Fantastic.
I think the other thing to say, Mitch, is when I think, in the beginning, you got to remember when we were looking at this product and looking to launch this product, it was, we were way ahead of our time because we launched a product at £600 a bottle. There was no rum on the market at the time at that price point. You could argue you could say it was quite scary. It was quite different. But for me, I looked at the product like I look at all my spirits, like I look at whiskey, is on flavor. For me, the flavor of this product was so amazing. It was intense, it was rich, it was complex, it was layered. Every time I retried the product, it changed, it evolved. And that's exactly why I get excited about whiskey, is because every time you go back to a particular whiskey, you think you know it, but it's changed. You get new flavors depending on the climate, on the day, on the environment, in the company of who you're with. And for me, I never found that very often in other spirits until I tried Last Consignment. So, we were really way ahead of our time launching a product of that caliber. And, going back when I was in the shop in 91, say, with that picture, the most expensive rum we sold was probably £25.
Yeah.
£30. You got to remember that. There was nothing premium on the market at all. So it was very courageous of us to do so.
And what was the initial response? Because this was obviously, people talk about rum having a renaissance now, and people starting to now appreciate some of the finer rums out there. But this was 10 years ago. So what was the response in the public then?
I think the important thing for me, Mitch, was that I was in no hurry. Yeah. I believed in the product. I knew it would take a long time. I knew we were doing something which was a new category, you could say, premium rum. So we knew there was work to be done. So I think the most important factor was I had no perception. I just believed in the product. And I had no time scale or dates to say I need to sell my stock within 5 years or 10 years. I was very open. I just said it will last as long as it lasts, and once we start converting people to it, they'll fall in love with it, they'll automatically buy it, and then the problem becomes it's selling too quickly, because you got to remember, Mitch, there's only a finite amount of stock. When it's gone, it's gone. I can't repeat it. This is it. This is a piece of history, and that's what's so special about it, that it's the real McCoy. This is the real liquid from pre-1970.
No, I think that's one of the things which is so exciting to talk about, like when we do a masterclass or a tasting with it, because there are so many rums out there which call themselves a Navy rum or Navy rum style or whatever, and it's other than this bottling, you almost never ever get a chance to taste that rum from that period. It's incredible.
Yeah,
So.
yeah.
So yeah, it's very exciting. So okay, so going forward from that, as you say, that rum is going to run out at some point. So I know at some point the conversation happened where you decided you wanted to keep the Black Tot legacy alive. You wanted to bring out other rums under that moniker, but like, what did that conversation look like? Where do you go from the real Navy rum to anything else?
So very early on, Mitch, of course, a lot of people asked us saying, this looks beautiful. We love the story. We love everything about it, but it's £600 a bottle. Do you not have an entry level? And for us, it was like, no. So I think from very early on, in my mind, I knew we needed to do something. Yeah. I guess the question was, what should we do? And honestly, I wasn't clear. Yeah. I didn't want to replicate Last Consignment. I just didn't think it was the right thing to do. But I was confused as to what to do. So honestly, we would have done this project maybe 7 or 8 years ago, but we got so busy with other projects, other whiskey projects, moving business, growing business, that we just didn't get a chance to come back to it. And then, over those last 10 years, the changes in rum, in the rum industry, in the perception of rum, it's been remarkable. It's been insane. From going back to, when we sold the shop, which was in 99, having maybe 10, 15 rums on the shelf today to having maybe 300 or 400 or 500 different rums, when you bring in all the single cask stuff and limited edition stuff. So you can see it's changed too much. It's changed a lot. I think the other interesting thing is the styles of rum, how they've evolved and how, things have changed. You've got, like the South American style, which is the richer, sweeter style. You've got now the multi, you could say the blended style of pot and column, which for me is really superb. You've got then, you could say more entry level basic rums, which are the column still distilled, quite simplistic. And then you've got the 100% pot still, which really were only around in the early 1900s, until a point when the column still came in, it was cheaper and everyone went down that route. So, that pot still sort of, it was there and people were mixing, some people were blending blending the two together and creating super products. So things have changed a lot. We've got our friend Luca, who's, one of the pioneers of leading this rum revolution and singing the praises of, 100% pot still rum against, let's say, single malt whiskey. But the thing is, for me, if you go back and look at the history of rum, it's actually about blending. It is really about blending. And I think if you look at it, even within distilleries, if a distillery is producing 3 or 4 different styles of rum, and when they're putting a product together and they're using these different styles of rum, at the end of the day, Mitch, that's blending. Yeah. If you're using pot still rum and column still rum from the same distillery, that's blending. Call it marrying, call it, whatever. But at the end of the day, the essence is it's blending. So for me, looking at all this, I think the blending element is really, really interesting.
And I think one of the things that fascinates me so much about the rum world is, we talk about blending in almost any other spirit, and usually we'd be blending one region or from one distillery, as you say, types. It's for me, it's such a unique part of rum's culture that we have all these blends of different countries, actual different flavor profiles from different islands and different styles, which
and they're all superb in their own way. That's what we love about rum. But each country has its own style. Of course, depending if it's column or pot, depending on the how intense the rum is, the amount of esters it has, or the type of casks it's been put in. All these factors make a difference. But really, each distillery, each country has its style, and those they're beautiful in their own way. But for me, when I look at it, I also love Scotch blends. Yeah.
Mm.
Again, when we look at single malt distilleries, great, they're superb. We absolutely love them. But actually, I'm also a fanatic of Scotch blends and blended malts, and actually how single malts are put together. It's the same thing. They're looking at different casks, the different profiles from each cask, or they're looking at different types of wood, and then they're blending them to create their products. Yeah.
Yes.
So growing up in whiskey, understanding how to put whiskeys together, I just looked at rum and looked at the history of, the original Last Consignment that actually was a blended product, to say, you know what, these countries make superb rums, but actually putting them together, you can create layers of flavor, you can create completely different profiles,
Mm.
which you might not be able to do from one distillery. And
Absolutely.
that's for me what was really interesting. So going back, when people started asking us, do you not have anything entry level? we, it took us ages to get there. So once, understanding how things were changing in the rum industry, how things were evolving, my mind was much more clear. It was a case of, I think we should create a modern style of rum using, everything we've learned from blending, everything we've learned from the components of Royal Navy, keeping, to the traditions of the Royal Navy, giving a nod to the Royal Navy. So using key components, or like Guyana, Trinidad, Jamaica, Barbados, for me was very important. We also looked at Australia, which, if you go back and the more research now, there's a lot more information coming out that actually Australia, for a large part, was a key component in the Royal Navy blend. And we actually looked at it, and we decided not to use it. But to be fair, over time, we may actually change what we've created to include Australia. For us, the brand Finest Caribbean is going to be an ever evolving brand. We're still learning. We've created a blend which we think is very good, but we know even in the bottle will get better. But we feel we can still go back to the blend and slowly over time keep improving it as such. So
So we've got a question here from
okay.
Daniela. So, understanding the rum story about blending, can we expect to see some more indie bottlings of rum coming from Elixir, either like the single malts of Scotland style or not at all?
Answer is yes. Again, something we've looked at for a long time. I think the main thing is a lot of companies are doing it. What we have to remember about rum is there are not many sources to buy rum. There's not many rum brokers like there are, let's say, whiskey brokers. There's not that many distilleries in rum like there are in single malt. So the thing is, you've already got a lot of independent bottlers in rum. So I think, again, for us, we're trying to look at what we can do, which is a little bit more different. It might be, we'll try and be more selective in terms of cask selection. Maybe that's the answer. Some companies or some bottlers like to bottle at cask strength or bottle. I find that actually sometimes cask strength in rum is just way too high. It's great for having a sip, one little top, but that's it. You can't drink two or three of them. I think it's just too much. So I think there's a lot of learnings we're trying to take from what other people are doing to see how could we do it better. Yeah, and we're in no hurry to do it. I would like to say maybe by the end of this year we will release, if not probably beginning of next year.
Well, that's very exciting to hear. And yeah, it's I think one of my favorite parts here is when Ollie Chilton, our blender, gets some samples through, and we get to try some of the
Yeah,
new
sure. It's
the
good
new
fun.
things coming in. It's always exciting. So yeah, it's yeah, I can't wait to see what we come up with next. It's well, in fact, we've got some other things to share later on. But
Yeah.
one question as well, whilst I've got you here. Is in between Last Consignment and Finest Caribbean, you did a very small run of this guy, the Black Tot
Yeah, the
40
40th.
Demerara, which um, I think has a fascinating backstory, but also is interesting because we see a couple of different iterations of it in the world. I know the Savoy Hotel has a 38-year-old bottling from the same casks,
39, yeah, 38, 39, yeah.
and we
So,
had some. So
so
how did that rum come to be?
a number of years ago, probably about 5, 6 years ago, I was lucky that I had access to buy a number of old casks from 1975, Demerara. And we tried the rum, and it was still drinkable. It was still alive. You know, had the heavy woody notes, but it was still pretty good. So we decided to buy that, and we went through all our cask stock, and some of it really needed to be bottled. So we selected the cask which needed to be bottled, and we bottled it as a 40-year-old. The reason we bottled it under Black Tot, Mitch, was that when you look at the Last Consignment, you know that there is a lot of Demerara in there. You know, the heart of that product is Demerara. So for us, the 40-year-old being a Demerara rum, for me, we decided to bottle it as Black Tot 40-year-old as a nod to Black Tot. You understand? So the 40-year-old is the heart of the top, or the Demerara is the heart of the top. So this is why we did it under this range. Do we have plans to do more? Not sure. We still have 2 casks of 1975 from memory, which is aging nicely. Some of this is now 45 years old. We monitor it every 6 months. And we monitor it every 6 months to make sure it's still okay. Ideally, I would love for it to get to 50, but for me, it's not necessary. We'll bottle it when we know the time is right. If it can't reach 50, so be it. We'll bottle it at 47 or 48 or whatever the age may be. I think the important is to make sure it's a good product still.
Absolutely, and it's no, it is an incredible rum. I think there's less than 300 bottles in the world in existence.
From
So
memory, yeah.
It's if you ever get a try
you asked
some.
me about the Savoy as well, mate. Sorry, I forgot to
Yes,
answer that.
absolutely.
So Savoy came to us and said we're looking for some special products. So we did a whiskey for them. We did a cognac for them. They asked us about rum. So we did a very small batch of, I think it was 38 or 39-year-old rum under the Savoy label, which they, I think, sold out of very, very quickly. I saw there was a bottle that came up at auction last month at Whisky Auction and sold for 15. No, how much was it? 4,500, something like that. So yeah, it's part of the same stock, but the 40-year-old, of course, is one or 2 years older.
Incredible, and I understand there's a little still aging in a cask at 45 years old now.
Correct.
So we might be seeing that in the blend coming up very soon.
Correct.
We'll Paulino, we will definitely make sure you get some of this rum. So for anyone who hasn't tried it, it was distilled in 1975 at the Iflet Distillery in the Port Morant still. It's just absolutely incredible. Again, another little piece of history. So okay, so we've sort of covered the origin story of Last Consignment, the 40 year, and then as you said, we've created now this Finest Caribbean, and I'd love to know a little bit more about the process, because obviously, you know, there are certain standard routes you can take when you're blending a rum and putting a rum together, and obviously going through brokers like Shear and stuff like that. But what was your journey with that like? How did that all come about?
I think it was honestly, it was amazing. It was a great learning experience, but as I said before, we took our learnings from, what we've been doing with spirits, in particular whiskey, which is really selecting very well, understanding how to blend flavors together. And so when we went to share, we in our minds knew pretty much what we were looking for. So we went to them and asked them for, this is what we're trying to achieve. This is not the end product, but this is in lines of what we're trying to achieve. What do you have available which we can play about with to get to where we need? So that took us a good 6 months. We eventually went through, I think it was 22 or 24 batches of samples. I would say even when we got to batch 14 and 15, we had a very good product. But for me, it was still not what I was looking for. I wanted something, a little bit different, something which probably had a bit more complexity, a bit more layers of flavor. So we kept tweaking it and tweaking it and tweaking it to get to where we wanted. So it was really, really good fun. I think it was a great journey because we looked at lots of components. We looked at Jamaican components, we looked at several different Jamaican components, several different Guyanese components, and to see how much difference 1 or 2% can make is incredible. Incredible. Especially when you have high ester rums like heavy Jamaican, you've got to be very, very, very careful. For those of you that know whiskey, it's like when you're creating a blend and you're using a bit of Islay whiskey, which is quite potent, quite pungent, heavy smoky flavors, that even 1% of Islay whiskey can make a huge difference to the blend. In the same way, so can Jamaica. So for us, we had to play about. We knew what we were trying to achieve, and I think we're close. We're very close to what we wanted. And as I said, I think for me, it's an evolving product which we will keep playing about with, keep changing just a little. And I think you'll find it'll get better and better and better over time. I think I'm very proud of the fact that it's a blend. A lot of companies are scared with the word blend. It's fine when you own a distillery. You don't have to use it. But for independent brands, they're ashamed of a blend. They think blend is a negative. I don't. I think blending is so important. That's where flavor comes from. So I think it was really, really interesting. It was really great fun, and our approach was different. And I think what was very nice working with Carsten, the amount of times we went back and we asked for changes and we asked for more components so we could play about with them to get to where we wanted. And at the end, Carsten told us, he goes, you know what? It's one of the most interesting and most fascinating projects I've ever done, and probably the one I've had the most fun with. I hope he doesn't say that to everyone, but we had great fun with him. We had really, really great fun with him.
Yeah, no, he's certainly a rum expert and a charmer, it seems.
Yeah,
No, wonderful. So we have a question from Naomi, a very interesting question. Will there be any batch numbers or a way to tell which iteration it is if we are going to keep evolving this finest Caribbean blend?
Not sure. The plan is no. I mean, look, we don't want to keep changing it. Yeah, it's more a case of evolving it to come to a product that we're very, very happy with, that we can then maintain. And we're not going to change it very quickly. We're going to change it. We're going to learn from our product. We need feedback from consumers, what they think about it, etc. And then, we want to see how it evolves. What a lot of people don't realize is the marrying time of a blend before releasing the product can be very, very important. Yeah, very important. So this is another thing we're looking at, is extending the marrying time or the bottling time and the release time before actually releasing the product. So if we can extend that, we will find there's going to be a big difference as well.
I think that's one thing that's impressed me so much is like over the months seeing how the blends evolved. It's a different rum to what I tried first in January. So it's fantastic to see, and it's fantastic that it's getting better as well.
I found amazingly, for me, Last Consignment is just getting better and better and better. Since we launched it, because you're mixing a lot of components together. They need time to harmonize, they need time to mellow out. We have a term in the whiskey industry for old spirits, which is bottle aging. And that bottle aging works really well when you have big batches of liquid where they're just mellowing out slowly. There's a little bit of oxygen in the bottle, so you've got a little bit of micro-oxidization. It just mellows it out. And what I'm finding with Last Consignment is every time I try it, it's just like every year it just gets better and better and better and better and better. It's honestly superb liquid.
Yeah, it is. I think we're going to have a few of those tonight. So my next question for you is sort of looking to the future of rum and Black Tot as well, but in general your plans with rum in the bigger picture, because obviously as you say, rum has developed so much over the years since you first had those bottles at the bottle store. Do you feel rum, a lot of people say, oh, rum is having, that ascension that whiskey's had over the years. Do you feel that rum is following in the same path and going to hit that same level of prestige, or if it's not already?
I think, look, the main thing, as I said, with whiskey is the diversity. You've got 100+ distilleries in Scotland alone. And, you don't find that with rum. So I think, will it ever be of that level? I would say no. Will it be up there amongst whiskey? Absolutely, yes. Yeah. The other thing to look at is you never found aged rum, or very rarely found aged rum. A lot of rum on the market previously was unaged, or, like a 6 or 7 year old product was like an old product because of the climate, because of the loss, etc. With technology, people are, they know how to manage their warehousing better, etc. So, they can get a little bit more out of it. The types of wood they use, using more refill wood can help prolong rum to get more aged products. So I think it's a very exciting time for rum. I think we'll see a lot of changes. The interesting thing, which I'm not saying necessarily is good, can be good for the category, is that if you remember previously, every how can we say it? Every week, 10 new gin brands would launch. Yeah. And that's happened for the last, 2 to 3 years. What we're finding at the moment is, as a retailer, there's 2 or 3 new rum brands every week. Yeah. So that, Mitch, will help the category as a whole. People just take interest that, oh, there's a lot happening in rum. There's another brand. So I think that's very good for the category, but also it can be bad for the category because, it's already a very difficult category as we know it. Guys, I need to excuse you for 1 minute. I need to put my laptop on charge. Sorry, I forgot.
Well, whilst we see some technical difficulties, if you're at home, make sure you share the feed. We're giving away about a bottle of Black Tot tonight. We thought rather than give Mark Zuckerberg some more money, we'd give you some rum instead. So pour yourself another tot if you're drinking along at home. We've got some great comments coming in and some great questions as well. A question from Christina, who I believe is in Berlin, if I remember correctly. Where do you do your blends? And who is your blend master? Because we all know who the drinks master is, Sukhinder, but who is your blend master?
So once we came up with our final blend, basically we gave that composition to Share and said, this is what we're looking for. So currently, pretty much our blend is done in the Netherlands. It's shipped to Scotland, and then we basically let it rest, let it marry, let it rest, and then we bottle it when it's ready. The other thing which we're looking to do is we have, as I said, we want to evolve the blend. We've got components we're looking at, and have started adding to our blend in Scotland, and are going to evolve it that way. I think the other thing for me very important is, as I said, we've come up with the blend with Share. We're buying it from Share, and we're doing that. But our blend, as I said, is going to be evolving. So what we did previously in our whiskey journey was that first we used to buy aged casks of single malt, and then we used to bottle them, and that was it. For the last 5 to 10 years, what we've been doing is we've been buying new make, we've been aging it to our profile, in our specification of wood, in our specification of filling strength, and aging it that way. A lot of semi-aged stock we bought, we recast into wood we wanted. So we have more control, if you see what I mean. In the same way, we want to be masters of this blend. So we're looking at how we can evolve this blend. We're looking at now filling contracts with certain suppliers so we can manage our own blend over time. We've got to stage 1. We're now going to be looking at stage 2. Yeah. On the whiskey side, for us, stage 3 is actually building a distillery. So we're currently in the middle of planning to hopefully look at building a distillery on Islay. And so who knows, you never know, we might do something in rum in the future as well. But for me, we need to get to stage 2 first, which, as I said, is starting to fill some of our own products, buying some young stock, aging it in the specification and in the woods, in the type of wood we want, so that we can evolve our blend. We are also looking at our current Black Tot blend, and we're sort of experimenting with that, how we can age it further, to see what else we can do. Whether we use that component back into our original blend, we shall see. And again, another thing that really intrigues us, and I think when the timing is right in the next couple of years, we'll certainly look at, when you go back and look at the history of Last Consignment and the British Navy rum, it was Solera based. Yeah. So I think this concept of a Solera really, really fascinates us. So I think when we get a chance, we will certainly look at creating some sort of a Solera system, and then trying to put our blend into the Solera to see how it evolves. So, keeping it as a living, breathing, evolving blend, always keeping a large proportion of the original blend back and adding, new stock to that. So for consistency, it's much, much better. Yeah. And I think as a product, it could possibly, be a lot more interesting, a lot more flavorsome. But time will tell.
Yes. So a question here from Dennis is, how important is the type of molasses used to distill rum versus the type of still used, or the type of cask for the aging or flavor of the rum, and which of these components has the most influence?
Guys, I'm not an expert on molasses at all, so I could not answer that question.
That's a big question, Dennis.
I think the base material will probably have a small impact. I can't imagine it having a huge impact. It will definitely have an impact, but I think in the overall scheme of things, I think way more important than anything else is fermentation. I think it's not given enough importance. Everyone talks about wood, water, things like that, but fermentation, I think, is the key to any spirit. Distillation is a key, vital part, but actually, in a lot of research we've done, the actual shape of a still, if you're talking about a pot still, You have, like in Scotland, various different shaped pot stills. They actually make very little difference. It's quite interesting. They actually make very little difference. I think what's more important is the boiling temperatures, the cut points, things like that. So I think that's important. Wood, of course, is super important. Yeah. There's no point in having really good spirit and putting it into average wood or bad wood. Yeah. You will get a bad whiskey or a bad rum, a bad spirit, full stop. If you have good spirit, you need to put it into a good cask. So casks are very, very, very important. And the difference between, putting spirit into, let's say, a first fill barrel versus a refill barrel can make a huge difference as well. The other thing, of course, people talk about, it's coming more in the limelight today, is tropical aging versus continental aging. Yeah. Our blend, Finest Caribbean, is all 100% tropically aged. Yeah. Literally, the stock is shipped into Europe and literally blended straight away for us, and that's it. So it is tropically aged, which I think is very important. I think for me, the difference between tropically aged and continental age, you get this beautiful warmth, this richness, this sun, this warmth that you don't get in continental aging. It's a different level. It's a different product altogether. Yeah. I think that's very, very important.
And another question from John: Will we be experimenting with other types of wood for casks as well?
When I'm saying it depends on specification of wood, I'm not talking about lots of different wine casks or things like that. I'm not the biggest fan. I think there is a place for it. I think it can be done well. I think Richard Seal is doing a superb job with a lot of the Madeira casks, the wine casks he's using. I'm a bit more of a traditionalist. I like ex-bourbon, I like ex-sherry, but I think there is a place for wine. So if we do wine, it'll be more of an experiment. If it doesn't work, we won't bottle it. It's as simple as that. It's probably more to do with learning. But for us, the type of product we're bottling, I think American oak, bourbon casks and refill casks lend themselves perfectly to our rum. I think different types of sherry cask can give you another dimension, a richness, which I think in the blend can be quite useful. So yes, we are.
Fantastic. And so you talked about sort of your long-term plan and sort of where we are at the moment, buying casks and starting to distill and age rums to our own specifications as well. So if not at the Isla distillery, where would be lovely to see some rum distilled as well, where would be your ideal location in the world if you were going to open up a rum distillery anywhere in the world? Where would it be?
I think it's a difficult question because every island has something special. I love the Caribbean, even though I don't know it very well. It's a special place. But I think for me, what really intrigues me is India. A, being home, and B, one of the biggest sugarcane producing countries of the world, and there is no world-class rum coming out of India, which saddens me, I guess. My dear friend Luca keeps pushing me and saying, when are we going to India to produce rum? So watch this space. You never know.
Fantastic. Let's do it. That sounds wonderful. So I suppose I know we have a lot of comments and a lot of questions coming in from people. Everyone seems to be having a great time with you, but I suppose we should start introducing what our plans are for the 50th anniversary, because we've certainly been teasing a lot about it. And this year, for those of you who don't know, 31st of July 2020 will be the 50th anniversary of Black Tot Day, marking the moment where the Navy rum blend was ended forever. And we've come up with something pretty special, and I'm very excited to be able to present this with yourself as well today, Sukhinder. And really our vision, our mission for this was, as the Navy blend itself brings all the rums from around the world together in the bottle, we kind of wanted to do that and make the day not just a Black Tot celebration, but a celebration of the world of rum itself as
Correct.
well. So Sukhinder, before we sort of throw up some of our names and a little visual on the day, is there anything you'd like to introduce or say about the day coming up?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone needs to realize how important, rum in the British Navy was, and how important Black Tot Day was. Of course, it was a sad day, but how important it is in terms of a celebration for rum. Because I think when you actually start looking at the figures and numbers and the volume of how much rum was purchased by the British Navy for the rum ration, it's actually insane. It's millions of gallons, yeah. And I believe if you would equate it into bottles, it would have been one of the biggest selling alcohol brands in the world. It just shows you the scale of it. And you could argue that there might not have been a rum industry if it wasn't for the rum ration. I think when you look at it that way, I think it's very, very, very important. We also, the other thing, it's the 10th anniversary of Black Tot Last Consignment. We launched it on the 31st of July, 2010. So we're coming up to 10 years, which again is very special for us. So I think, it's important. And I think, I've spoken about blending. We use rums from Jamaica, Guyana, Barbados. Those are the three key components. In some of the other products which we're looking at doing, including what we're going to tell you about in a minute, we're using, some of the other Caribbean islands, or some of the islands which contributed heavily to the rum ration, including, Trinidad, for example. So I think, being a blended product, I think it's a fitting tribute to, bring the world community together to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Black Tot Day. So, Mitch, you want to tell everyone what we're up to?
Absolutely. So we decided, originally our plan of course involved a lot of traveling around and coming to see all our favorite bars and bartenders and people in real life. But unfortunately, due to all the current restrictions, that's probably not going to be possible in all places. So we wanted a way which everyone could still participate and everyone could still celebrate with us on Black Tot Day. And so myself and Dawn Davies, the head buyer from the Whisky Exchange, have decided to embark on a 24-hour rum live stream where we will be inviting guests from all around the world, all our favorite distillers, blenders, key rum influencers, to share their stories and show us a bit about it. And we've got a little visual for you here to show. This will be going up online very soon. But this just gives you an idea of our lineup over these 24 hours. So we've got some wonderful guests, Jen Akins from Rum Bar in Seattle, Don Ben from West Indies and Barbados, Florent from Company des Indes, Trudy-Ann Branca from Mount Gay, just a countless list of amazing rum people that we're very, very excited to be introducing and bringing to the stage. So over the next few days, keep an eye out on the Black Tot Rum Facebook and Instagram. We'll be putting this up along with details on each of the sessions that each of these speakers will be joining us for. And of course, Sukhinder, we're going to be having yourself back to open up the proceedings.
Absolutely.
With. So we're very excited. We don't believe anything like this has ever been done in the world before. We don't think anyone has tried to stay up and, well, no, people have tried to stay up and drink rum for 24 hours. It's definitely happened at Trailer, but it's I don't think it's ever been publicized. So this is a new experience for all of us. But
it should be amazing.
We're very excited. We're delighted to have so many wonderful guests join us, and I think it's unusual sometimes to have different brands and different people work together, and that's what I'm so excited about with the 24 hours is really trying to bring the world of rum together. So yes, it's going to be pretty amazing. Here we go. Yeah, okay. We Chanel, who honestly runs all our tech for us in the background, has a counter every time I do a session on how long it is before I mention trailer happiness. So I'm getting better, it seems. We also have some amazing. Just seeing Paulina there as well. Reminded me we've invited 50 bartenders from around the world to create 50 Black Tot cocktails. We've got some incredible videos which have been shared with us, which again we're going to be putting up over the next month. There is, yes, there'll be a Facebook event page you can subscribe to. You can get all the notifications, set your calendar reminders, and get it all on there. But basically what we're doing, the reason why we're telling you today is you've now got 30 days to book off. So we start at 10 a.m. on the 31st of July. Make sure you clear that 24 hours. For anyone who's, I don't know, should we have a prize for anyone staying up with us for the full 24 hours? If you manage to do it, stay up with Dawn and I. It's going to be a fun day.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so it's a kind of, and we also have a special rum coming out as well to celebrate.
We do, yeah. So we cannot celebrate the 50th anniversary of Black Tot Day without a 50th anniversary Black Tot blend. So what we did, guys, is, again, we didn't want to replicate Last Consignment. We wanted a nod to Last Consignment. We wanted to pay homage and pay respect to Last Consignment. So the way we approached it was, we just thought, what are some of our favorite rums, that are available to us at various ages, and what would happen if we put them together. So again, it's a lot more complicated than I'm making out to be. It took a long time to put this baby together, but I haven't got the exact blend. I don't know if you have, Mitch, or we're going to advertise it now, but maybe later. So we've taken some amazing stuff, including some lovely Coroni, some 45-year-old Demerara, but, some beautiful Trinidad's Coroni, some various Jamaica, various Guyana, and of course, Foursquare. So on the label, we've got the full exact recipe of what goes into it, at what age, the type of still. So I think, again, we're very proud, even with Last Consignment, that, we're trying to be as transparent as possible, and telling exactly what our blends comprise of, the ages, the profiles, because I think being open is important. They're pure products, which is very important, but I think this gives people knowledge, in terms of how blends work. I remember recently, a couple of days ago, I think someone posted when they saw the label for the 50th anniversary by accident, and their comment was,
"We've got that post if you'd like."
Yeah, you've got. I think it said you've got 0.5% of 45-year-old or something. Was that right? Does it make a difference? It absolutely does. Because when we were creating the blend, we initially hadn't put in the 45-year-old. We had put in some of the original Last Consignment, still from Flagon. But we got to a point that it was like, it's beautiful, but for me, it was missing a little bit of the heart, a bit of that richness, a bit of the heart. So Ollie and me, Ollie works with me in blending, who is our chief blender. So we just said, let's try adding a little bit of something pretty heavy, heavy, woody, powerful, to see if it makes a difference. And 0.5% was absolutely perfect. 1%, believe it or not, was actually too much for us. It changed the profile completely. So yes, a tiny, tiny amount can make a huge difference to a blend. So unfortunately, due to COVID, it's not going to be launched imminently for 50th anniversary. We will have, I think, liquid to taste. Am I right, Mitch?
Absolutely.
But it'll be launched soon after.
we're going to be doing the first previews on Black
Correct.
Tot Day itself.
Correct.
So we have some liquid on the way here now. We can share with you. So this was the post that went out that sort of first leak. Some of you may have seen it, which the first ever preview of the 50th anniversary label that we have coming out, and it's from our good friend Matt Petrak at Cocktail Wonk, who put this up. And it was a surprise to me, I must say. Matt hadn't told me it was going up, but this is one of the joys of having the TTB labeling in the States, is that everything goes up on their website as soon as it's approved. And we've been, one of the things I was really hoping, and I know I spoke at lengths with yourself and Ollie Chilton, our head blender, about this as well. One of the things I was very passionate about was this blend breakdown, and I was delighted that we went for it. The thing that everyone seems to be very excited about is this part of the label here, which I think is pretty much a world first. I've certainly not seen anything with this kind of breakdown before for a blend. And yeah, being able to show exactly, not just tropical and continental aging, but blend percentages, the stills it's coming from, the distilleries. It's for me as a rum geek, it's super exciting to look at, and it's been lovely to see so many of you getting excited about it as well. So.
Just one comment, Mitch. That blend recipe has actually changed a little bit.
We have changed it,
And this is what I'm talking about. Things are always evolving. Things are always changing. So when we sent this out for approval, we were still working on the blend. We thought we finalized it, but you keep going back to it, you keep changing it, and so it is changed slightly from this recipe. Not much, but a little bit.
So on the 31st of July, there'll be a very special session in the 24 hours where myself and Oliver Chilton will be sitting down to discuss the blending process for this rum and how this all came about. So tune in then, and we'll have the official final label for you all to be able to see what's coming out.
And it's absolutely delicious. It really is absolutely delicious.
It's so exciting. It's going to be one of those. I think it's doing honor to the 50th anniversary. It's a hard one to follow up with when you have the last consignment already in your arsenal. It's a hard one to follow up, but I think done a superb job. So yes, it's very exciting. Yes, exactly, Keegan. Like salt and food and business and drinks. It's true. A lot of people asking about the price point for the 50th anniversary as well. Is this?
I believe it's going to be around £100.
Okay.
It's around £100 a bottle.
Okay, so not quite as crazy as last consignment, which is I think a relief to a lot of people.
It's way too cheap.
Yeah. So more details coming up soon. Any last questions before we finish up? We've got a very mysterious question here from Benedict. Which rum in your various blends do you find is the one that brings it all together and in the darkness binds them? What's been your experience, Sukhinder? Because for me, when I try the individual components that go into Finest Caribbean, because that's one of the tasting sets we're doing on Whisky Exchange. Obviously, each rum in that blend brings a different element to it. The Jamaica brings that spice and intensity, those tropical fruits. The Barbados brings that beautiful, pina colada of rums. And then the Guyana, for me, is that, body and that richness. So,
yeah. I think, look, what's important is when you're creating a blend, the individual components might not be products you would drink on their own, if you see what I mean. Yeah. Of course, you like rums from those distilleries, but then there's a right age to drink them. But when you're creating a blend, they work in a very, very different way. Of course, they have to be good, clean, pure, honest products, but the profile of the products, the core product, can be very different to what you can drink as from a single distillery. So for me, I might not necessarily like the lighter, fruitier ones on their own. I might prefer, the heavy ester, Jamaican, Hamden, whatever. But I think in their own way, they're all beautiful. They
Mm.
really are. They're very beautiful. This is why I think, as rum people, we like all of them. We like Foursquare, we like Barbados, we like El Dorado from Guyana, we like, Hamden from Jamaica, Appleton from Jamaica, Long Pond from Jamaica. So I think there's a place for everything, but you can't necessarily say that I'm going to use my favorite rums to create a blend because it might not work in the way you need it to work. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, it is funny, and some of the tastings we've done where we've shown people the individual components, quite often it's, I don't like this one, so I'll leave that one
Correct.
out.
Do you see my point? Yeah.
And it throws the whole blend off. Yeah, it's interesting.
Exactly.
I think as Keegan mentioned there, like the bitters in your drink, the bitters in your old fashioned, you might not drink shots of it unless you're a bartender trying to avoid stock take.
Yeah.
But a couple of dashes and bitters just completely transforms your old fashioned or whatever drink that is. So.
No, good.
Limited run. Are we doing a limited run of the 50th anniversary?
I believe it is 5,000 bottles. Top of my head.
5,000, yeah. Yeah, 5,000 bottles up for grabs. So yes, grab them while you can. We'll let you know. Again, on 31st of July, we'll be announcing officially and showing you the final blend. We'll be discussing it with Ollie Tilton as well. And we'll be telling you how to get your hands on some before it all runs out. So, and we also have, in fact, the most exciting part about the 50th anniversary, which I am going to save till the 31st of July. But when we tell you what that is the beginning of, it's absolutely stunning. It's going to be part of an ongoing yearly tradition that you guys are going to get excited about. So we will save something for Black Tot Day itself. We don't want to give away all the secrets now. So Sukhinder, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you everyone who's been watching and tuning in. Any last words for your new rum fans and followers out there in the world?
My rum fan? No. I'm still an amateur. I'm still learning, Mitch. No, I think it's a good product. You got to get to know it, and I think we're trying to do something different. We've taken the blend approach. We're trying to use beautiful spirit from different distilleries around the world to create a product which is for everyday drinking, which is you can go to it for whatever reason possible, for sipping, for over ice, in a cocktail, quite versatile, but flavorsome. And I think remember 50th anniversary of Black Tot Day is really special. It is a celebration of rum, all over the world. And I think that's what we're trying to do with this 24-hour rum festival. It's a celebration of rum. Thanks very much, everyone. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. And before we go, we have to actually announce our winner of the bottle of Black Tot Finest Caribbean for the sessions. So one of you who's shared the session today will be receiving a bottle, and we're going to be sending it to Yoni Miller. So Yoni, get in touch. But congratulations, send us your details and we will send you out your very own bottle to enjoy with us on Black Tot Day. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sukhinder. Have a wonderful night, and we'll see you very soon on Black Tot Day for 24 hours celebrating the world.
Guys, take care. Thank you.
Cheers.